佛教呢，就是互相有这个相成之处啊。你对科学和佛教之间的对比，或者是在这方面呢，就是你什么样的感想，在你的研究和你的教学过程当中有什么样的一些看法
？So, I think Mahayana Buddhism is a natural expression of Buddhism. It's unselfish, it's generous, it's social. And that's what Buddhism should be. I am happy to answer any questions you want to ask. I would, if you are prepared to do so. I think my most difficult job is teaching Buddhism at a university in Aberdeen. The students are interested. Some of them are reading through the Bodhicharya Avatarana Shantideva with me. But at the same time, these are students. They drink, they smoke, they want to see something different every week. And so I would be very grateful for your advice for maybe a simple Chenrezig puja, a text that I could teach them, or maybe even a menla, something like that, something that would make them better, something that would make them healthy. I'm worried about them because a university is supposed to be a place for learning, but in Europe it's oftentimes a place where young people go to play very, very, very hard, and 4 years of their life disappear and they miss a chance. And those of them that do ask for teachings, I'd like to be able to give them something that nourishes them and helps them. So if he has any suggestions for a simple sadhana, a simple meditation text that I could teach and that I would be allowed to teach, I'd be very grateful. The things that I know properly are far too serious to teach them, and I can't really pass them on that easily. So something simple. Believe me, some of them act like crazy sages, but they haven't got the foundation to be crazy sages. I'll be glad when they get there in the end.
是的，其实，我在想你们，大学里面学习这个入菩萨行的，这是非常好的一个事情。我们以前在我所在的一些藏地的有些学校，他们开这个普贤上师演讲，还有就是你们开的这个入菩萨行论，当可能3-4年当中就是感觉不出来怎么样，当后来他们到这个工作就是应该在社会上，然后做很多事情的过程当中，就发现就是他们的整个人生呢，就是跟其他人完全都是不相同。所以我们觉得呢，就是一个是就是让他们不管，当然我知道里面有个别人可能不听话，但我还是希望让他们好好的学习入菩萨行论。当然同时呢，可能就让他们念一些观音心咒啊、文殊心咒啊，就这样也会有就帮助的。从大的方面可能讲一个实修法，就是这都不一定很实现。念一些咒语，我看他们也可能会能接受。
Is there even so, is there a good first a meditation? They're called meditations in front. Not a self-meditation, but a meditation in front. Is there a good, simple one that he would recommend? Maybe one that has maybe one from Jigpun even, Khenpo Jigpun. There are different stages of meditation.
You mean the primary ones?
No, there's Kriya, Charya, Yoga, Anuttara, Ati, Anu. There's a whole set of stages. When you visualize the deity in front of you, this is a lower stage, and it's appropriate to people who are not ready to see themselves as the deity. So, I mean, because we have Samye Ling up in Scotland, then I've got a very simple Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig sadhana from Taisitupa, and I sometimes use that. But I'd prefer something that I knew came out of the kind of Rime Nyingma tradition. I'd be happier with that. So if he has a suggestion, I'd be very grateful. For instance, yesterday's transmission, right, clearly that is the phrase we use as we say it's fresh from the Dakini's breath, right? It comes straight from his teacher. So if he thinks that's appropriate, I might request the actual text of that, if he thinks it's appropriate.
You mean?
The text that he taught us yesterday. Yesterday's Chenrezig. Yeah. But the way that he taught it yesterday, it's a self-visualization. So I couldn't teach it to the students like that. It's too much for them. But if I can teach it to them as a front visualization, then maybe that would be appropriate.
应该是可以的。昨天的这种观音呢，就是也是可以观修的。还有呢，法王如意宝有一个文殊菩萨的一个非常简单的观修方法，文殊智慧能舍，就是一个，就是到时候我们可以翻译出来，就是给你提供，就应该比较简单的，可以的。
If I understand correctly, Khenpo Jigpun actually had a whole series of Manjushri meditations, Jampalyang Gong, ranging from Ngondro all the way up to Ati. This is what I've been told. I have heard about this for 15 years, this practice. I've never been able to actually meet it, but I've always wanted to. When I was very little, when I was a student, I had a very strong vision of Manjushri. And I've always been trying to figure out what to do with that, because it sat with me my entire life and I've never quite known what to do with it. So when I heard about Khenpo Jigpun's system, it was wonderful. And if there is a basic, an introductory visualization within that system, that would be tremendously helpful.
这个，肯布精美本尊仁波切的那个书法，就有两种，有一种呢，就是一般的大学生呢，就是一般的一些实践人可以念诵的一个文殊菩萨的简单的一个仪轨，还有一种是刚才你讲的一个，就是从一个四加行一直到就是大圆满的最高境界的，但是这个呢，可能是给一般的一些学生和老师传的话，可能不行的，因为他要经过一个很严格的这个加息呐、灌顶呐，就是这些。
No. I know about it. This is I've only talked about it once or twice because I know how powerful it is. My Khenpo Tsewang Sonam told me about it, and I've been hoping to hear more for many years. As I say, when I was little, I had a series of very powerful visions of Manjushri, which is it's part of why I do what I do.
我像你刚才跟这些学生提供的，应该文殊菩萨的这种修法呢，就是应该很适合。
Please, I will always have more questions, but if he has questions, I'm very happy to answer anything I can answer.
我的这想这个问题，一个问题，他作为一个那个就是大学的这种教授，然后同时教学工作很多年了，在这个过程当中也要接触佛教的这种这个观点还接触禅修那就我想要知道，就是他整个国学已经学了多少年，然后整个现在的这个通过学佛，尤其是学藏传佛教的密法以后呢，对他的转变和就感受有什么样跟大家分享？
What a good question. I don't know how long I've been practicing, is the honest answer. Probably at least since I was 12, maybe younger than that. I was born in California, and Buddhism is around, it's just available there. So I remember going to Japanese temples when I was little and ringing the bell, and really enjoying that. When I started university, I had a choice between either doing biology or doing Buddhist studies. And because of and actually to me they're the same thing, but that would take a while to explain. So I wound up doing Sanskrit and then working on Buddhist texts, and by a lucky accident I was able to go work in Nepal with the last remaining Sanskrit Dorje Lopon, the last remaining Sanskrit Bhadracharyas. There is still a tradition. And so studied with them. I took lower, like open public empowerments, like Avalokiteshvara empowerments then, but it was only in 2001 that I had a proper empowerment from Penno Rinpoche. That was an amazing, that was a very good one. It was a very powerful one. First off, because it happened in Yangmingsho, and because I was able to see many of the really good Khenpos and Rinpoche that I knew were all there. I also had very strong visions during that empowerment that have shaped what I have tried to meditate on ever since and how I've tried to understand things. There are at least two answers to his question about how the practice of tantric meditation has changed me. So, I think one answer is around confidence. There's a fundamental principle in Tantra, which is the principle of non-duality, Nibbametta. And he's right. He hasn't said it directly, but he's right. In the West, it's difficult to both teach Buddhism and be Buddhist. People see that as somehow untrustworthy. Somehow you have to have scientific distance from what you teach. And so I was always very cautious how I taught. But taking the tantric commitments, taking the samaya, meant that that was no longer a choice. I had to be one person. And that made everything easier. It's meant that I must teach. So in my university, I have no choice. The tantric commitments say, if a good student comes, you must teach them. So I do. It's meant that because I do a lot of work with Himalayan people who live in Scotland, if they say to me, we need you to do a ritual for us, then I go find the ritual and I do it. There's no point in being shy. I have to do this now. And in that sense, the non-duality which sits underneath all tantric practice, a fundamental commitment to non-duality, actually makes it much easier to balance what might be a divided life. The other answer to the question is, it has to do with one of my teachers from Nepal, who was a very, very wise man. And he said that for the complete tantric empowerment to happen outside Buddhist Asian, a Drukchen, a Mahasiddha, had to find the mandala in the landscape that would be the real mandala in the landscape that made it possible to give the teachings. Now, this is something that's very important to that school of Buddhism. Again, it's made me think about where I live differently. So I am now very carefully studying the landscape, trying to understand where the mandala is around Scotland and how we take Scotland and make it not just someplace where there's a Buddhist centre, but someplace that is Buddhist, in the sense that is meant when we talk about actually visualizing a mandala in a place. That's much more difficult and a much longer term project. But those are two answers. There are probably more. I think one other answer, now that we've got two, I'll give a third one too. If I'm a Buddhist and a professor, then one's constantly switching back and forth all the time. But if I have to be both because of the tantric commitments, the samaya, and because of the non-duality of wisdom and compassion, then recognizing the 5 poisons and transforming them becomes much, much easier. Everything you do in a classroom, in a meeting, applying for funding, traveling on trains, becomes an opportunity to transform the 5 poisons into nectar.
那你觉得现在这个佛教的这些理念跟这个现代科学，因为佛教是2500多年前的，那么现在21世纪的这个科学这么发达，那他们之间有没有什么发现一些矛盾的地方，或者说是佛教的思想跟不上这个科学，已经落后，或者说这个科学和这个佛教呢，就是互相有这个相成之处啊。你对科学和佛教之间的对比，或者是在这方面呢，就是你什么样的感想，在你的研究和你的教学过程当中有什么样的一些看法？
I have a paper I just wrote on exactly this subject. This is a big project, but there is no contradiction, but both sides must be fearless. Start with that and then I'll give an explanation. So there is no contradiction, but both sides must have no fear. So we know that in the Abhidharma Kosha, there is a very careful description of Mount Meru and the 4 islands and the whirling clouds around the outside. We know that doesn't exist. If we try to preserve every statement like that within the Buddhist scriptures, then we are bound to fail. But the underlying principle of Buddhism is that it is therapeutic, it's healing, and it's empirical, it's based on evidence. And if we remember those 2 things, and we know that we have a good guru, a good lama, to support us, then it is possible to engage honestly with science and help science learn new things. So a really good example of this is actually in biology. Western intellectual heritage says the only kinds of animal that can know things are humans. But Kempola was saying yesterday, bodhicitta, we have to look at all sentient beings as our mothers. So for Buddhists, there is no sharp distinction between human people and other people. We now know from studies in animal behavior that animals as diverse as crows, monkeys, and octopuses are all intelligent, they all solve problems, and they all have a sense of playfulness. So we can no longer say that humans are the only knowing animals, which is what the Western tradition would want us to say. In this sense, Buddhism was right 2,500 years ago. And this is something that is a really basic assumption about Buddhist science, so to speak, that's correct. And the West needs to learn from that. Western science needs to learn from that. But, again, if you go back and you look at Asanga or Vasubandhu, they say that, first off, they did not know about bacteria. Right? They didn't know about anything smaller than they could see. They hypothesized that there were atoms, but that's all they did. We now know that a person is actually, 90% of my genetic richness is my bacteria in my stomach. Right? Most of my genetic richness is my bacteria. And we are social. Right? In the formal Buddhist analysis, we can say there is no self. But this is a psychological analysis. If we are prepared to be brave, if we are prepared to be fearless, then we can look at the old Buddhist texts and say, well, they didn't know that plants talk to each other. They didn't know about bacteria. We can actually do Buddhism better now, because we can prove that a person, that non-self, it isn't just psychology, it's biology. Each person is composed of millions of organisms. And those organisms are all moving back and forth between us. Our mothers give them to us, and we give them to our children. We're a big messy thing. We're not, even biologically, we're not one thing. That's wonderful. That's a biological proof of something that is fundamental to Buddhism. So just as we have something to teach science, science has something to teach us. Both sides have to be fearless. That's why I said that. I think actually, without wishing to venture into too sensitive a subject, there actually is a very important role for this kind of thinking in the way in which China faces the environmental crisis. Because Buddhism has the capacity to teach political theory quite a bit about how to think about the environment. Right? For us, when we talk about an economy, it has to be an economy of all living things. It can't just be an economy of people. It can't be an economy of humans. It has to be an economy of all living things. Sustainable development, if we want to talk about sustainable development, it has to be sustainable development for the trees, the bacteria, the birds, everybody. But that's a dangerous thing to say in some contexts, but it's a necessary thing to say.
你觉得藏传佛教的一些修行啊，还有一些理论啊，这些方面对西方人来讲有什么帮助？那么藏传佛教是跟其他佛教，包括南传佛教、北传佛教是一样的吗？或者说有比较不同的呢？你为什么要选择学藏传佛教
？My practice is rooted in two traditions, actually, because we talk about Tibetan Buddhism. I would talk about Himalayan Buddhism, because there is still a living Sanskrit tradition. They are Vajrayana, and they are very close to the Nyingma Buddhists, but these are the people that I first studied with. I think Mahayana is, without wishing to offend a number of my friends who are not Mahayana, I think it's the only sensible form of Buddhism. You have to start with that. The fundamental altruism of the Buddha's teaching finds its fruit in Mahayana Buddhism. Then, within that, we have Vajrayana Buddhism. And the Sanskrit texts say, as do the Tibetan texts, that Vajrayana is a set of special techniques within Mahayana. So the fundamental basis for all of this is Mahayana Buddhism. But Vajrayana, the special techniques and the extraordinary developments around introspection, meditative practices, that only really developed in late Indian Himalayan Buddhism. So I think Mahayana Buddhism is the natural expression of Buddhism. It's unselfish, it's generous, it's social. And that's what Buddhism should be. And to be honest, and this would make them grumpy, but a lot of my friends who are Theravada practitioners, I think actually they behave like good Mahayanists because they care a lot about the people around them. They act for the sake of all sentient beings, even though they say they're not Mahayana. But they might not like to hear that. Then Vajrayana within that reaches its highest development with first the Sanskrit tradition, the Drupchen, the Mahasiddhas, and the tradition that follows on from that, almost entirely in Tibet, but still a little bit in Nepal. And I think that's where the most powerful tools are. That's where the highest realization of this altruism is. That's where the most mature manifestation of compassion is. So it's the obvious choice. Right now, well, no, go back 100 years. It's very easy to say, this is Tibetan Buddhism, this is Zen, right? This is Chan, this is, right, grey robe, red robe, right? 100 years ago, you could make that distinction very sharply. 1,000 years ago, that distinction didn't exist. And especially among the Tibetan schools, it was the Nyingma that worked very closely with Chan to develop really powerful, single-pointed concentration techniques. And I think now it's wonderful to see these traditions in conversation again, in part because Zen has a very good sense of humor.
I didn't quite get the last sentence.
I think the conversation that's starting to happen again now between the Tibetan traditions and the Zen traditions, the Chan traditions, it's a really good conversation because what Zen brings to that is a sense of humor. Zen understands in a way that I don't think any other Buddhist tradition understands, that sometimes what you need to break through to enlightenment is a good joke. So he will have understood from some of what I was saying that a lot of my work right now is trying to find the edges of the Madhyamika Yogacara synthesis. And these are texts by people like Shantideva, Kamalashila. There are a series of great writers who are late Indian writers, who are philosophers that synthesize key parts of the tradition and give us the basis of Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. And I'm reading through those texts, looking for places, looking for tools to engage with the theory of science and the theory of ecology right now. I think there are probably also very good texts by Jangom Mipam, but I don't know what texts there are. And if he might suggest either Sanskrit works that I haven't looked at, or texts by Longchenpa or Mipam or another key figure that I could use to help keep working on this question of how Buddhism and science, especially Buddhism and ecology, meet each other, not just as, meaning to do the right thing, but as serious disciplines in conversation with each other. I'd be very grateful for recommendations of texts.
我看，马旁仁波切对一些医学方面的，比较多，然后，天文学方面的也有，还有呢就现在的一些，包括一些传统的一些心灵学方面的，就这方面是比较多的，比如说像那个天文学的话呢，有石轮金刚的大手，就有很大的这种就一本书，然后就还有逆算方面，也就是说现在的我们所谓的这种怎么讲，就是一个是天文学，一个是就是我们平时的这个日常生活当中的一些就心理方面的，就是包括一些现在的这个就观理学吧，就我们仁波切有个叫亚波利基单球，就是那个是可以说跟现在的一些这个国王的这个怎么样执政，就是它可以涉及到如何赚钱，如何治理国家，如何就是在民间当中就是怎么样就保持着他的信仰和保持他的高尚的这个行为等等，我觉得这方面比较多一点。然后龙钦巴的这个法里面呢，可能大多数都是就讲到一些可能最高的一些心性方面的，就是七宝藏也好，四心地也好，这些都讲的是比较这个神圣方面的。然后也有一些历史和就是一些逻辑学，就是有一些逻辑学，就是龙钦巴尊者也有这方面的。然后对这个宇宙学这方面的话呢，就是龙钦巴也有不同的一些观点。就是这个龙钦巴的呢，就是这个如意宝藏论，就是它是一个比较全面的这个诠释的一个论点。龙钦巴也认同。
这 OK。
每个人就累积单据。
OK。
它这个累积单据这边主要是，我们现在也在学，就是它是跟这个时间和佛教两个结合起来，怎么样管理人啊，就是怎么样现在的这个管理学，还有现在的一些，包括就是政治学，还有一些也涉及到一些这个经济学，就是怎么样这个赚钱，但这个成分不是特别多的。更重要的就是它是一个，就是整个国土的，包括一些环保啊，就是还有一些人的这个心灵的这种信仰这个问题啊等等，就是在这个论点当中，其实作为一个领导或者是作为一个管理者的话呢，特别有必要就是要学习他的一些精神。
Two very different last questions. The first one is not a very good question to ask a monk. But my work in Aberdeen is not just with students. We have lots of families. And there's my family, but there's lots of other families. And if it would be helpful to know maybe out of the whole month, if I only had time, or I could only convince people to take part in, say, 2 rituals a month, which 2 are the most important?
他们最好是修这种机制，就是先可能是从机制开始，然后还有呢，我们这个禅修当中很有必要，可能有一些佛教稍微基础的人呢，就比如说念一些咒语，就前面观想一个什么这个观音菩萨啊，或者是释迦牟尼佛啊，然后就下面就开始念他的咒语，就然后就有时候睁开眼睛看看，然后有时候就这样这个就打坐，就是这种方式的话呢，我觉得可能刚开始或者说是经常这样串习，心会得到这个平静，很重要。
Now this one, I actually spent a long time practicing Zen, so that's I can actually teach basic Zen meditation very easily as well. So that it takes a little bit of work, but getting them just to sit properly and focus is not too difficult. The other question is, Aberdeen is a strange place. I hope he will come and find out about it for himself. But we're very far north, and that means in the summer our days are very long, and it's possible to do sky meditation at 4 a.m. But right now the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and I've realized, whether I like it or not, I have to do darkness meditation. I have no background in darkness meditation, so could he give me a couple of very simple pointing out instructions on how to meditate in darkness meditation?
我觉得，因为像我们观那个一些大圆满的特殊的一些，比如说看虚空啊，就这些的话，需要可能白天的这个时间。那我们平时其他的，包括密法的修法啊、宪宗的修法啊，就这些都是不一定是用这个白天，所以晚上也好，平时在生活当中呢，就观修就很好的。那在这种情况下，我自己是这样的，就觉得我们一个作为修行人呢，随时都是要拿着这种念咒语啊，就用正念就是来去经常观修。第二个的话呢，就是可能有一种祈祷，就是也是用一种就平常就是对自己的本尊啊，对上司啊，就是做一个祈祷。第三种呢，就是就这样，就是有时间有机缘的时候，就是开始打坐。那这个打坐的这种环境这些的话呢，我觉得跟白天晚上应该没有什么差别，就是可能是跟时间就是有关系，只要有时间，然后这种修行到一定的这种稍微有一些成熟的时候呢，可能行住坐卧都可以的。所以作为一个可能修行比较成熟的人来讲，这个白天啊、晚上啊，就是这些都是并不是特别的重要，就是不管是东方也好、西方也好，或者说白天也好、晚上也好，或者尤其是在人群当中也好，独自一人也好，到一定的时候，当然是就很随意的，就不分这个环境，就是这是修行当中也是最重要的。就密法里面是有背黑观的一些修法，就是这个的是，比如说我们这个尼玛当中的一些白玉派当中呢，也有一些这的修法，但是这个是特殊的一种这个观修方法，也现在不是特别就实行。
You can practice either among people or by yourself.
He's playing with Manjushri's sword again. Oh dear. I'm very careful to repair my vows every day. But I promise Kempo that whether I see him next in Aberdeen or in Narumgar, I will repair my Tibetan.
我 我也护持我的英语。
Oh dear. Now, it would be wonderful to see Larugar. I don't know if I'll be able to find a way of doing it, but it sounds like a real Pure Land.
Wonderful.
Aberdeen, we're still trying to make it into a Pure Land.
对，야만도.
신도야고.
야만도. 저런 백시기도 간다고. 보바칸. 백게 디스시로 여러에.
용능삼. 배착해. I used to. When I was working on my PhD, I had to read a lot of Tibetan and worked on, read some Mipam, read some Longchenpa with Kamapunso and Khenpo Tsewa and so on. But since then, the kinds of subjects I'm responsible for in Aberdeen don't give me the time to work on Sanskrit and Tibetan and Nepali, so I had to choose, and Tibetan lost. I think I had promised myself I would start working on Tibetan again this year, and of course now I have to learn Mandarin. Would you like one? This is, I've told my children that if they are good Buddhists and they study to the point of practicing mantrayana, then I will give them this earring too, and it will be a sign that we are part of a lineage.
他说，他跟自己的孩子说，如果他们的孩子也是佛教徒，也好好修行的话，他就把这个耳环送给他们，也算是一个传承。
If I did what I'm supposed to do, right? If I didn't cut my hair and I let it grow long, which is what I'm supposed to do, given what I do, I would never be able to work in a university. But I need some other sign, so this works.
他说。就是自己可能没有办法把头发剃光，成为一个和尚，因为他需要在大学教书。但是他就把这个耳环作为他佛教徒的一个标志，戴在耳朵上。
是不是里面红色的是钻石？
Is there ruby?
Diamond.
Is that a
ruby?
This, no, yeah, it is a ruby. Yeah, it's a ruby. Yeah, properly I should have 3 small jewels to really make it proper. But then the people I work with are.
以前我们藏地那个年轻的那个小伙子都有就比较大一点的耳环，但现在好像没有，就很大的那种耳环。
Some Tibetan youths used to have very, very big earrings back before, but now they don't do it.
No. Well, I thought about taking it out, but then I realized that I had a wife, children, and I was never, ever, ever really going to be a monk, so I might as well keep it.
他本来是想把这个耳环拿下来，但是他觉得自己有家庭、有太太、有孩子，可能就是没有机会成为一个和尚剃度，所以就把这个耳环一直戴在耳朵上，算是他自己佛教徒的一个象征。
很好，3宝有3个空，3个。
It's good.
I have a look.
Oh,
very wonderful.
It does. Maybe next life I get to be a monk, or maybe my children can be monks. We'll figure something out.
尽力希望下辈子他或者他的孩子成为和尚。
I think one of my children does want to be a monk, actually, but I'm not going to push.
他有一个孩子确实有这样的倾向，但是他不会催得太紧。
对，不能催，慢慢来，先学习为主。
Take it slowly.
Yeah. No, in this society, if you push, they push back, you lose everything. Yeah, absolutely. But we have a ritual when you give a child a name in my wife's society. When you give a child their name, you show them a plate filled with tools. And the thing they choose is the thing that they're going to be. Right? So 2 of my children have gone for the largest book they could find. One of them
他说，在他太太那个社会的传统就是给小孩子取名字的时候，会在他面前摆一个盘子，盘子里放着很多器物，然后他们的传说是说，孩子选了什么，将来就会变成什么。他有2个孩子是拿了2本最大的书，但是另一个孩子就是直接选了念珠。
So that's 2 scholars and a monk.
所以预示着未来可能就会是2个学者，还有1个和尚。
So we're going to be very hungry when we're old.
所以他们比较穷，
都不赚钱，
赚钱的。
他们都变得很饿了，以后一直都处于饥饿状态。